Alright, quick little update. Oh boy, it's been a thrash. Really tired. It's about 4:30 in the morning right now. And I'm moving along. Now, my boys got the new exhaust in there. Which, you know, it's not easy. You gotta pull everything apart and snake that in there. This piece here at the end is a sleeve which replaces a catalytic converter. And I was told by Sal at S&P that the motor will run better if I have both O2 sensors in there. So I have a bung. I'm going to weld a bung in that pipe right there and run two O2 sensors rather than one, like I was planning. But that's no big deal. And then the motor's in here. We had to fight the motor again yesterday, trying to fit the new axles in there, which are in. We thought we were going to use the old ones, but like one of them was too short and one of them was too long, so he had to pull it back apart. And he had to put those axles that actually I ordered with the kit back in there. Got the sway bar in. Looks beautiful. But yeah, all said and done, we got everything buttoned up and done, and then putting the lower cradle on, and it don't fit. It hits up against the differential. So we had to delete the cradle, which is a bummer because you know, it helps hold this car together. The good thing is we are able to run the sway bar, so that's kind of cool. As this thing has been without a sway bar forever, that race header on that 1.8 motor, it wouldn't fit. And then once we got all that stuff hooked up, this bolt right here, we had to put that in. Guess what? It won't go in. So then we have to move the motor, unbolt all the mounts, get the jacks out, move everything around. Frustrated as hell. This front mount slipped up past the frame there, the cross member, and the motor's wedged in there. Me and him are both frustrated, pissed off, and we finally got it. Now, it's a mad, desperate attempt to get the wiring done. I've got kind of a plan. We'll get the main engine harness done here and wrap it with some of this cloth vinyl type loom protection stuff. Now I'm going to get that done real quick. And then the main part of this loom right here, which plugs into the ECU. Now normally these wires for the ECU go through this hole here, and you have an ECU sitting up in this location or over here, I can't remember. But I kind of want to keep it out of there. I'd kind of like to go through the hole in the firewall, but the plug don't fit. So, believe it or not, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut every one of these wires, solder them and heat shrink them back together on the other side of that firewall. And then on the other side of the firewall, we'll plug in the ECU, mount it up in there. This also goes into the ECU. This little fuse block with some relays for the fuel pump and that will go in underneath the dash. And then all that's left is a plug-in that'll go into the other part of the harness, and I can lengthen these wires if I need to get that to plug in. And then we've got the two O2 sensors, which will come out of the bottom of the firewall. And again, I'll hack these wires and put them through a small little hole with a rubber grommet versus worrying about these great big connectors and trying to find a hole to put those through, because I know there ain't one down there. And then the MAF sensor, same thing. If I need to, I will cut the wires, lengthen them, and mount this wire exactly where I need it. And then the rest of these wires will work into the rest of the harness. You know, this is going to be for the throttle pedal. Of course, that's inside. Fuel pressure, tachometer, ignition power, regular battery power, ground, and the OBD2. So that's all pretty simple. Simple. So there's nothing to it but to do it. And then hooking up all the linkage on the transmission. Got a neat little master cylinder. That'll be for the clutch. That's a pretty cool little item. And got the wrong size fuel lines. Here's a catch can I'm going to use in place of the PCV system of the car. And then we got to hook up the throttle can't think, speedo cable. Yeah, anyway, I'm getting down to nothing. I moved the radiator over so it fits in there now and clears the manifold, so that's done. And everything's pretty much done. Just got to get the wiring going and hook up the water hoses. So here we go. Well, better stop and do a little update. So we got all of the cooling system hoses figured out. Got the overflow bottle, reservoir mounted. Able to use pretty much the same hoses for the VR6. So this bracket with these hard lines, it kind of gets hidden behind the manifold and it mounts up properly to the motor. So that'll be used, and that's really cool. And then integrate that into the heater, which came out just fine. And then the bottom hose, same thing. And bottom hose comes around. This is a VR6 hose here. Who knows from where, but there it is. And then the radiator hoses. Top one's just going to be a simple thing. The bottom one runs from the auxiliary pump down there. And that's a factory hose too that pops off of that, and it'll come across. And then we got a T, so it'll plug into here. There it is right there. So that piece right there will come across from the auxiliary pump and then plug into the lower radiator port. And then that one right there will plug into the upper radiator port. So anyway, water's done. I almost got the wiring done. Got this part kind of tucked up, comes down. Injectors, got a wire coming across, which I'll tie up pretty for the knock sensor down there. This stuff I've got routed off, aux pump. I'm not sure, this might be a low oil. Warning light. Got alternator wires ready to plug in. And then all the cam sensors and stuff. I got a ground right here. Throttle. And this is a temperature sensor, which I'm going to figure out one way or another. Hook in right here. And I believe make my temperature sensor work. And same thing with my oil pressure. The ECU has nothing to do with the oil pressure, so I just ran my original wire with the original sender, and that'll hook up to my gauge and show me oil pressure. And wiring for the fan. I've got the wires, the ground and the hot, ready to plug into the harness that he already had made on the fan. So he's got a relay, temperature switch, and the whole works already plugged in on the fan. So all I need to do is hook up the power and the ground. There's my starter wire down here. Get those two connected together. And so yeah, that's it for the wiring on the outside. And then this plug here, which I've got tucked into this loom, the wire harness. I'm going to snip this thing and then punch it through that hole and then go to the other side and solder it back together. I'm probably going to have to extend the wires some to get it over to the location where I'm at, as I'm going to end up putting the ECU inside, and I'm going to put it just right down here. Now there's the other half of the plug sitting there already. I'll have to extend the wires and come to this location down here. And so now I'm working on the other half of the harness, which I've got the two O2 sensors poking through that hole, ready to plug in. I snipped those connectors also. So those connectors will be soldered and heat shrinked back together at the proper length to be able to plug in the O2 sensors. And then I'm gonna hang up this fuse panel somewheres, and then start hooking up power, ground. Then this is simple, just mount the OBD2, plug this into the throttle pedal, and then I just got to find ignition power, which will be easy. And then I got to find my fuel pump wire, because the fuel pump will no longer work just from the key. The fuel pump will now work from the ECU. So I'll have to locate that wire. And it won't be that big a deal because it's right in that harness there. It comes around. So it's going to be one of those wires there, that pink one or the yellow one. One of those will be for the fuel sender, and one of those is the power for the pump. So that's what we're up to now. And then this is Friday morning. We got today and tomorrow to get this thing done and cleaned up, ready for the show Sunday. So another step closer. I've been busting butt on the wiring. The boys have been knocking off a list of other stuff, installing different things like breather, fuel lines, and all kinds of crap. But I've got the wiring buttoned up. It's not a show car, but you know, it's doable. It's clean. It's doable. And it's gonna work. Right in the middle of extending this harness. Which looks kind of crazy, and it kind of is crazy. So there's the other end of it right here. And I've got each wire taped on the end of it, so I know which one, after I pull it through, where it goes. It's a pain in the ass. It's like 30 wires or something right there. So I'm going to bundle all that up, you know, tight. and just poke it through that hole. And then this part here, out here, where the wiring is done. I've got the alternator wired up. Ran the wire for the oil pressure. I have a wire sitting here for the temperature gauge, and I'm going to have to look that up, see where I want to plug that into, but it's right there, one of those two. And I got to finish up a little bit of stuff here. Starter wires hooked up. And I made a plug for the fan. And with the fan, what I did, look at the mess. Look at the mess. The fan, I ran a wire. So after the temperature switch activates, I ran a wire from the hot wire back out, and that goes back into my loom, which is going to power the auxiliary water pump. So if the fan turns on after the car comes off, so does that after run pump. So pretty much that pump runs every time the fan does, which is no big deal. But the big deal is it's kind of cool that it runs after, it'll run, keep the head cooled off. Oh, I've got to hook up some grounds and linkage on the transmission here. Valve cover, manifolds, radiator. Finish that wiring. He's got the suspension all in. He's got the exhaust in. The exhaust is in, and yeah, it's pretty good. It's big, so it's hard to get it in a spot where it don't want to rub and bang. Yeah, I've got a couple O2 sensors down there to still manage, I see. Yeah, a lot of work, man. And tomorrow's Saturday, so tomorrow's the deadline to get this thing done, cleaned up, and then to get my car done, cleaned up. Get ready for the show Sunday. Okay, here we are, about 5 hours later from my last video, but it's a new day. Look at this friggin' mess. Funny. Funny, funny, funny. That's the way it goes. Look at that setup over there. That's going to be a complete setup. Exhaust, radiator, complete running motor with ignition system, harness, everything. Just a complete setup. You take a junkyard car, got nothing in it, and you spend a day, 2 days, and you got a runner. Anyway, back to this. I believe my wiring mess is now contained to just right here. There's my harness extension laying there. I've got that routed where I want. Now I just got to splice it together with the connector, the end of it. And then all I got left is about 5 wires for power and fuel pump and that. And then kind of tidy up that little section there, finish that part up, because that's about it. And then it's time to finish up the rest of it. The Mad Dash. The Mad Dash. Oh, that's right, I got 2 connectors down here still for the O2 sensors. I got to wrap that up down underneath there. And route those wires properly. Oh yeah, it's getting there. So today's the last day. This thing's gotta be done soon, now. So there's the harness end. Get that thing plugged in, and then I'm gonna finish up power wires, ground, tack, fuel pump, and clean that mess up right there. Alright, and what, it must be about 1 o'clock. Got the shifting linkage, clutch, all that stuff is hooked up in there. And it all went well. There's a couple of spots where you pin out this linkage here, and there's a place where you pin out on the shifter, and then you just pull these back, relax them, and then pull it back, and then pull the pins, and then it's automatically adjusted. So I just went and checked. It hits reverse right where it should, first gear right where it should. So it feels good. That part's done. Everything's got the motor grounded, tranny grounded. Got the clutch line plugged in there for the fluid. What else? All the wiring is done. Underneath I got the O2 sensors set up. This stuff here isn't quite done yet, but that's easy to bolt that up. I gotta secure the ECU. I got all that stuff in there cleaned up. And then this right here is the OBD2 sensor, so really cool. You have an old car with all this modern stuff. Hydraulic clutch, OBD2. You know, variable cam timing. So it's going to be pretty dang sweet. What else? I don't even know. So I guess it's time to plop the radiator in there. Manifold maybe first. Anyway, combination of all that stuff. Alright, so there it is. It's pretty good in there. Got everything pretty much hooked up. The intake is not what I wanted, but we're running out of time. And we got to get the clutch bled, and it's not working out. So anyways, let's see if we can't fire this thing up. Get a little pickup, right? Let's try and fire it up. Give us a little pickup and go. Great. It's got some kind of issue, that's what. So it's trying to idle. You gotta get some water in there though. And I don't know. It's smoothed out a little bit from where it was. But at least it's running. I'm gonna go get back to work on the clutch. Yeah, my boy's gonna go get some more fluid for the antifreeze, and then we'll go from there. Well, here it is, Sunday morning. We made it. Got it together, got it running, but it's got a couple issues and still not enough time to make it to the car show, so whatever. It was a goal. We didn't make it, but we're not disappointed because the main goal was to get this thing done and get this VR6 in there, and boy, we're happy with how it turned out. Real happy. It's going to be awesome. So there's one little oil leak where the oil cylinder goes. That's going to be easy. There's one, maybe two water leaks in the hoses. That'll be easy. Got to finish bleeding the clutch. That's been an issue, getting the clutch bled. And the motor runs fine, but then there's something clicks, something switches off, and then bleh, it wants to die. And then it's hard to start up for a couple seconds, and then it fires right up again. Revs up fine, runs good, and then bleh. So I don't know. Got to figure out that runnability issue. And once those 3 or 4 things are knocked off the list, then it's just kind of normal stuff. Creaks, you know, whatever, loose stuff, rattles from exhaust. Little by little, you iron those things out as you drive it around. So man, what a thrash. So I'm gonna finish, I'm gonna clean up this garage. Yeah, and then we'll, instead of go to the car show, because I really didn't care too much about that, play around here a little bit with this thing. And maybe go to the car show. I just fired it up. Cold. And it idled up kind of rough, and then it smoothed right out to this. And you watch, pretty soon it'll just die. Thing looks pretty good in there, don't it? Looks way better than the original motor. Need to add a little water. Try to figure out that clutch. It's driving me nuts. Do a little research on that or something. Remember when I did the yellow one, put a hydraulic clutch in this thing 10-15 years ago, and I remember I had the same damn problem. This is kind of a rare transaxle on this thing. Bolts up to a 1.8 motor. Yeah, it's a 6-speed 02M. So anyway, I had trouble with the clutch. I'm just looking, trying to see if I remember anything. Where is that damn thing? There it is. Yeah, so that one's completely different style, slave. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, this thing is sounding good still. And I kind of made it die there. That's what it'll do. And then it'll play this game for a minute. And I mean a short amount of time if I just let it sit. Fire back up. Not quite warm yet. Thing wrapped out hardcore. Last night I rapped on it and that poor tack, I mean, I don't know how accurate it is, but wham, you know, it went clear out in there to the fuel gauge. So yeah, something in the tune here, I believe. Right in the middle of fixing a couple of water leaks. And I figured out that the crank sensor had an issue. The wire was stretched tight from the dipstick. It was plugged in but stretched tight. Anyways, I unplugged it, moved it around, plugged it back in, and the motor runs now without dying, at least as of yet. So I read a thread on the Vortex where a guy had the exact same symptoms, and the dealer ended up changing the crank position sensor. So I got underneath there to check and make sure I had it plugged in, and I found out it was in, but it was really tight. Like I say, ripped around the dipstick the wrong way. So I thought, well shoot, it's plugged in. Anyway, that's all good. Got my clutch bled, finally. It might be leaking a bit. But I think it's bled enough to take a test drive, and along with what little water leaks got left. Hopefully that part is fixed. And the heater core decided to be bad all of a sudden, but this will be a quick, easy heater core to change, pull out. So I think I'm about ready for a test drive, to be honest with you.